Are you new to Vtube Studio? Did you just commission a VTuber model? Is the mouth not quite working how you want it to work? Do you often have moments where you're staring into your game with your mouth open? Just like this? I have some solutions and answers for you. Hi, I'm Switch. I'm a live 2D artist and rigger. My specialty is in furry content, but I actually make a lot of other human VTuber models as well. I'm going to show you today how to navigate Vtube Studio so that you can make your model look very smooth when you talk, and also maybe when you blink too. Just a disclaimer before we start, this is a tutorial meant for people who are completely new to Vtube Studio, who have never touched it, and the settings menu. We're going to go through not all of the settings here, but definitely ones that you can kind of tweak to make your model run a lot better. This won't be a tutorial on how to rig mouths, sadly, but I will leave some below in the description in case anyone is kind of like here looking for that or like interested on how it works a little bit in depth. Yeah, let's get started. Switch from the future, one more disclaimer. Not all live 2D artists and riggers will be comfortable with you going in and editing certain files, so please talk to people first before you kind of start going to the files and tweaking things. Yeah. Okay, bye! When you first load into Vtube Studio, you'll probably be met with this base model and also all of these settings on the side. If the settings don't show up when you open it, you can double click anywhere on the screen and they will pop up. The first thing I'm going to do is show you how to import a model into Vtube Studio, just so that we're all kind of on the same page, and if you haven't already done that, up to speed at least. To import your model into Vtube Studio, you're going to click on this coral button at the top. It's going to open up basically all of your models. You should have like the 4 base ones right here, and if you downloaded anything off of Steam, then it's going to have the Steam icon and it should just show up. To import your files into Vtube Studio, you're going to click Import Your Own Model. This will open up this menu here, and you're going to click Open Folder. This is going to open a Windows file. We can get to this later on through other means I will show you. This menu should probably look a little bit different. I have mine a bit sorted just because I do commissions, and sometimes they can get a little bit crowded with how many versions that I have running. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to make a new folder. You can name this folder whatever you want. The only thing is I heavily recommend putting _VTS beside it. I tested to see if it worked without _VTS beside it, and it did. I think it's just in good practice to do this. I'm going to name this test _VTS just for now. Now that you made this folder, you're going to get your files that you commissioned or downloaded off of Etsy or wherever you managed to get them. You're going to take them. I would recommend copy and pasting just for good luck, but you can also drag and drop if you want. So now that you've done that, you can close out of all these windows. Press OK. Now that you've put the files into a folder within Vtube Studio, you're going to want to close this and then reopen it. Sometimes it doesn't show the file immediately when you do that, so if it still doesn't show up in this menu, close and reopen it one more time. I find sometimes it just doesn't fully refresh if you don't click it twice, so I always just click it twice for good luck. Now you're going to look for the model that you just uploaded in this little menu. If you only have the first 4 base ones, it should be pretty obvious. It'll be the no icon one. It won't be named after the folder you just made. It'll be named after the files that we just put into the folder. I will advise, do not rename those files. It will not change the name of this. It will just break the model. You won't be able to get it to work. You'll get a CMD3 error. So once you click it, I'm cheating because I didn't actually make a new folder, but you're gonna get a pop-up menu that looks like this. What this means is basically the top button is Vtube Studio will automatically set up this model so that it has all of your parameters and everything just kind of ready to go, baseline, very easy. If you have never uploaded a model to Vtube Studio, or you have no idea what this means, just hit auto setup, okay? If you are uploading a version of the model, like a new version of the model, and you want to keep, for example, your keybinds, your parameter settings, anything that pertains to the model, click copy setup from other model, and then select whatever model that was. For the sake of right now though, just click auto setup if you're new and have no idea what this bottom button is. This will remove 20 existing VTS parameters, create 20 new ones. This is good. If these numbers are different, does not matter, just press OK. What that just did is it made it so that all of these things are now set to live 2D inputs. We will get there, but first let's back up for a second. Feel free to take a second and just kind of like figure out how you feel about the model, if it's tracking right. Maybe the eyes are stuck looking up like this and you don't know why. Maybe they're jittering. Maybe the mouth is jittering. Maybe the mouth won't close all the way. Take a look at it, see how it looks. You know, do a little dance. Open and close your mouth. Usually live 2D models are rigged to be mouth open, so like that, and also frown and smile. So you can go, mwah, and you can also frown and smile just to see how it looks. So first of all, with this model, I noticed that the mouth doesn't really open very well, like at all. Sometimes it can like jitter a little bit. I don't have any issues with the eye capture, only because I am using an iPhone for my tracking, which means that it just tracks the eyes really well. If you're using a webcam, I find that a really common experience is that the eyes will get stuck looking up like this, or when you look left to right, they don't always like move when you're looking. So let's fix it. So if you look on this left menu here, this pink button is all of your settings. I'm not going to go through like a really in-depth tutorial about the settings, but I will give you a very brief one so that you can kind of see how it works for yourself. Your first menu here is General Settings and External Connections. These settings will be Vtube Studio wide. Like, if you change to a different model, these settings will always be the same. Same with these webcam tracking video and visual settings. These settings here, the webcam ones, they will always stay the same no matter what model you have. And for the most part, the rest of this will. There's certain things like this display lighting stuff that will change between models. But we're not really worried about that today. That's some stuff that you guys can find out on your own. These last two menus here are your model settings and your hotkey settings. These are going to be model exclusive. So if you swap to a different model, they will be completely different. When we first ran this auto setup, we had this option to copy setup from another model. When you click on that button, it only copies these two menus here. That's why I said probably run auto setup. If you have a different model and you really liked how it was set up, you could try copying it over, but I can't guarantee that it would always work, just because models are made very different and sometimes they have different names for things, so it could kind of mess it up a little bit. The first thing that we're going to do is go through this general settings menu. Side note, if you ever need access to those model files again, click on this button and it will open your streaming assets folder. This will have all of your live 2D models, as well as your items, if you would ever like to add more items. So for my iPhone users out there, or honestly any phone tracking users, this is how you turn on your settings and connect to your phone. I'm not going to go into depth on how to do that, but here they are. You found them. You can also use USB settings to connect your phone to your computer. I used to do that. I found that it was really hard to prop up the phone to use it for streaming when I had it plugged in because it comes out of the bottom, but they're here if you ever need them. We're basically going to scroll all the way down until we see the microphone settings and advanced lip sync. I'm going to talk about this a little bit briefly. I made a tutorial a couple years ago on how to kind of make your mouth move a little bit better than it was before, because I noticed a lot of VTuber models, they have a mouth that moves a little bit funny or maybe sits open for some reason. I found that it helped out a lot of people, but some people were kind of talking in the comments like, well, advanced lip sync doesn't really work like this, or this doesn't really work like that, I will be fully transparent. This is terrifying. So the first thing we're gonna do is turn on microphone and select the correct one. We're not really going to touch anything in here right now, but we are gonna take a look into it like later on. So just kind of mentally remember that this is here. Further down, we have this advanced lip sync. I looked a little bit into this. It's not very common for models to have advanced lip sync. If you're unsure if your model has this, I would recommend contacting whoever made the model. Basically, all models are rigged to have mouth closed to mouth open, okay? And then on the other side, they're also rigged to have mouth frown to mouth smile. So you have two bars. One is -1 to +1, and the other one is -1 to +1. Sometimes these numbers can be a little bit different, a little bit higher, maybe 1.2 or 1.5, but typically that is how that works. When you're talking and the model's mouth is moving, it's typically tracking how wide your mouth is and the form that your mouth is in. So is it frowning or is it smiling? For advanced lip sync, it's tracking what noises you're making. So like ah, ee, ooh, eh, oh. So what riggers can do is they can make it so that you have a frame that opens when you make that specific noise. A specific like mouth shape, if you will. If you've worked in cartoons or know anything about 2D cartoon animation, you should have some semblance of what I'm talking about with lip sync. If you've worked in VR chat models, you'll probably kind of understand this as well a little bit. It is just the same as like a lip sync that bases the mouth shape on the noise that you are making. If your model was set up for advanced lip sync, when you click on setup in model, it should find those parameters and set it up. You'll see not found in live 2D model, param-A, param-I, everything. It should find these and automatically set it up. I don't have advanced lip sync on this model because this model was made before this setting came out, but it should show up here. If it is the case that you do have advanced lip sync, you're gonna want to click that, and then you want to basically hit calibrate, which is where you'll hit it and then make the noise that this is making. So for example, and you would go all the way down the list until you get to the bottom, and then it should be pretty clean, honestly. I don't think that you would really need to like touch too many settings with advanced lip sync. That feels like it would be really polished. But that's how you would set that up, in theory, if you had advanced lip sync. I would recommend just doing it anyway, just for the vibes. But for now, we're just operating on normal model with no advanced lip sync. The next thing that we're going to do to kind of clean up a little bit of the tracking is head over to this model settings. I'm going to give you guys a really brief, just like glance over of this menu. It is a really scary menu. I don't recommend touching anything in here unless you know what you are doing fully and completely. Because if you start to kind of fiddle around with things, it can get messy pretty quickly. This is basically a menu for all of the animations and movement that your model can do. I'm going to start at the top and kind of just go down the list on relevant things. The first thing you can do at the top here is change the name of your model. You can also change the icon if you have a PNG in the folder. So again, if you want to access them, quick recap, open data folder, live 2D models, and then whichever model that we have, just drag a PNG in here and it will show up right in here and you can click on it and now you have an icon. I wouldn't touch idle animation or if tracking is lost, unless you know what you're doing or if someone has told you to mess with this. This just basically sets an animation for like when you're idle. So for example, if I was just like this, I could set an idle animation where maybe she's like doing this little dance. Or if I lost my tracking, I could just be like shaking my head and it would just play this if the tracking was lost. but I wouldn't really touch these if you don't have any animations. If you uploaded your own model, I would make sure that you disable workshop sharing. That just puts it on Steam Workshop. I just don't think that people want that. Before we move down to the parameters and tweaking some stuff, this auto setup button is your friend. If you make any mistakes, or maybe something now moves wrong, or you've set a number somewhere and it's not right, click auto setup, run the auto setup again. It'll put everything back to how it was originally when you first imported the model. So this is your emergency, oh no, I made a mistake. Click on that. Scrolling down from this top menu, your movement config is basically setting where the center is, or kind of like moving them around a bit. It might be the center. It would make sense if it was the center. I actually don't know too much about this. It just kind of moves the model around on your screen. I would set this to wherever you are comfortable with if you are looking for like numbers. I find that if you get up from your desk, sometimes you can kind of do this. If you want to stop that from happening, just turn this off. It'll make the model stuck in place, so they don't travel around the screen or get small or get big or do anything weird like that. They just kind of stay in one place and only do the tracking. For the physics settings, I wouldn't really tweak anything in here off the bat. If you maybe find that your rigging is a little bit like, oh, the physics move, but I wish that they would move more, you can turn this up. Maybe not all the way, but if you want that, you can. Or maybe they move too much. Now they don't move. You can also mess around with wind strength and dragging physics. I'm pretty sure it's just like if you move the model, it'll have physics, and this is just like, oh, it's windy outside. You don't need to have those on though. Scrolling down past that, we are going to encounter a lot of really scary things. These are all of your parameters that make your model move. Again, I would not touch anything if you do not know what it means. And if you touch something accidentally, auto setup reset button right there. So the first thing I'm gonna do is finish setting up the mouth, just because it's really noticeable that it's just not really tracking my mouth very well, especially when I'm talking. I'm noticing a lot of the time it's very closed. So I'm gonna scroll down in this menu until I find mouth, smile, and mouth open. This will be in a different place in everyone's settings, so you will find this anywhere in this list. I'm gonna start with mouth open. You're going to set your input right here to mouth open plus voice volume. Or voice volume plus mouth open. You can search in the bottom. Select that. Your output is going to stay the exact same. Do not change that. And you can already tell, like, my mouth is only opening when I talk. It's looking a lot better. What we're gonna do to kind of make it even more smoother than it already is when we talk, because you can tell it's kind of just like opening and closing really quick. I don't really all the time like that, but if you like it, you can keep it that way. I'm gonna turn my smoothing probably maybe there. Test it out while you're doing this too. I mean, I have an excuse because I get to talk the whole time. So see, now it's not really opening when I talk. So I'm gonna turn it to like about a 7. And now we can see it's a little bit less jittery. The next thing we're gonna do is the second meter. So before I mentioned that there was 2 bars that go from -1 to 1. The first one is mouth open and the second one is mouth smile. We're gonna set our mouth smile to mouth smile plus voice frequency. Or voice frequency plus mouth smile. Again, search at the bottom. We're not gonna change anything on the output again, but you can kind of tell that it does look a little bit better. We're also gonna turn the smoothing up on this parameter. I find that I need a little bit more smoothing on this, so that when I'm speaking, and even when I'm like frowning and smiling, the transition between mouth open and smile and frown is a little bit better. so you can test it out, and you can see that it looks a lot better when I talk. The mouth opens, it's not jittery, and looks pretty good. The reason I'm setting mouth open to voice volume plus mouth open is because I find that sometimes it doesn't pick up your mouth very well, and that can be okay, but this kind of guarantees that when you're speaking, your mouth will always be open as long as you are making sound. So it can make it so that like when you make short, quick noises, it's still getting picked up and your mouth is still opening. It does mean that if you're making noise with your mouth closed, the mouth will still open. So for example, but it doesn't limit you from just opening your mouth when you're not making noise. I really like these settings. I would heavily recommend that if you're having a lot of issues with the mouth, to change them to this, and you will see it is a lot nicer. The second thing that I noticed with this model in particular, as well as a lot of other VTuber models, is that very often the mouth will track as frowning or a little bit open, kind of when you're just sitting there. So, for example,
It's just 2 o'clock.
Is that late?
You know you smoke too much of that shit.
that is just me with my default face. She always looks like she's frowning, and I don't really want that because I don't really want people to think that I'm like, you know, like having a bad day. In mouth smile, we have these two parameters on the outside. The inside is basically tracking your mouth exactly. So if I smile, it goes to the top, and if I frown, it goes to the bottom. This is one-for-one tracking if you're smiling or frowning, and then outputting it as smile or frown in the art. You can see how they both move together. What I like to do with some of my models, if I find that they're tracking very frowny a lot when I'm making a neutral face, is I set my parameter here to either negative 0.2 or negative 0.4. What this means is that instead of going all the way down to -1, which is the frown, it's only going to negative 0.4. So you can see it kind of grays it out a little bit. It just means that it's not always going down that low, and the base is always a little bit higher, like the middle level. When you're not smiling or frowning, you're just like normal. So when I make a neutral face, this is what it looks like now. It helps out a lot because I find that there's not a lot that I'm frowning at all the time, but I'm still able to convey it in a different way. I wouldn't turn this off if you do like to frown a lot. I don't know, it's a weird thing to say, but like, yeah, if you find that your mouth open settings are not quite working, or maybe it's like activating very quickly, or it just doesn't seem right and the smoothing isn't really doing much, you're gonna go into here and go back to those mic settings that we were talking about earlier and just kind of tweak that. I notice that her mouth is peaking a lot, so I'm gonna turn down the gain just a little bit. And you'll notice that it's not peaking as much now. Yay! Yippee! So play around with these and see kind of whatever works for you. This is not the for sure way to do it. Everyone has different mics. These are the settings that I use, but I'm also using a very specific mic. And if you have a different type, you might need different settings. It'll also depend on like how close your mic is to your mouth or if it's really far away. So play around with these. The last thing that we're gonna do is kind of make the eyes a little bit smoother, because mine are pretty okay because I have iPhone tracking. The first thing that we're gonna do to kind of like address the eyes is go into this menu actually. We're gonna scroll down to tracking settings and just kind of mess around with blink sensitivity. I find that a lot of the time, if your model isn't blinking, turn your settings up. It'll help quite a lot. And if you turn your eye open sensitivity up, that's just how sensitive the tracking is to your eyes being open and closed. Tweaking these settings will typically help with a lot of like minor issues that I'm having where something isn't quite tracking right. When I used a webcam, I found that tweaking with these was really helpful, honestly, because it's just like how sensitive the tracking is to what you're doing. Feel free to play around with these. I don't usually touch them as much anymore because I have iPhone tracking, but no harm, no foul in touching these, honestly. There's a reset button right here if you kind of make a mistake and something's not working right. The other thing that we can do to make the eyes a little bit smoother is scroll down to your eye open and eye smile. These will all be rigged under 2 parameters, smile and open, just like the mouth, but the eyes will be separated. If you find that your sensitivity for blinking is still like kind of nuts and crazy, I would turn up the smoothing on the eyes. But that's like an end all if it really does not work. If you find that like when you're kind of making a face like this, where they're like a little closed and it's kind of like blinking and like weird, like I would turn smoothing up on eye smile. I haven't really touched these settings for my model because I use an iPhone, but I find that eye blink and smile issues are really prominent with people who only use webcams for their models. So if you're kind of just like having a rough time with the eye tracking, I would play around with this a little bit. Don't touch any of these numbers or like this input or anything, just with the smoothing and these settings here. Last but not least, we're gonna address the webcam eye looking up all the time constantly like this. It's really common. I had it a lot when I used a webcam before I had iPhone tracking, and even now with the newest model that I just put out, she also was having issues with the eye tracking only looking up. So I actually turned my webcam on just so that we can like test this out a little bit. Again, you'll notice that I am stuck permanently looking up compared to the other tracking, and that the mouth track's a little bit funny. So first thing we're going to do is hit calibrate. That's going to kind of center the face a little bit so we have a little bit better tracking. So now that my eyes are stuck completely up, we're going to go find IY and we're going to change this number, which is going to be really fun. I can see that my eyes are constantly hitting 0.50, which means that it always thinks I'm looking up. So we're going to actually change this one number here and we're going to set it to 0.30. I'm cured. Basically, what this is doing is capping it so that we can only look up to 0.30. We cannot look any higher. So I can still kind of look up, but not really. I would really recommend doing this as like an end all, because like, again, it does cap you from like looking up, but it's not the end of the world, honestly. And it is a pretty good solution to this problem, because like, hey, now I'm like looking straight at you. Hi guys. Hey, it's me from like the really far future. I recorded all of this video at the same time, like maybe a year ago, and I never recorded an outro, so I'm recording it like really late, but I just finished editing it, so it's definitely time to like record this, I guess. I wanted to say I made this video for people who have no experience in Vtube Studio. I feel like there's a lot of tutorials on YouTube talking about Live 2D and how you can like do things in Live 2D, but I don't very commonly come across videos that talk about Vtube Studio and how to like navigate it and like what settings to do and like what not to touch and like if things break. I feel like a lot of people will commission models and realize that Vtube Studio is like really freaky and everyone kind of figures stuff out as they go, or honestly I feel like a lot of people just like upload the model and then they don't like really change any settings. They just like go, oh, I guess it's rigged like that, and then kind of move on with their life. I felt really bad because when I put out that little YouTube short and TikTok kind of explaining like, oh, here's how to make your mouth rigging better. When I put out that small short video on Shorts and TikTok, I felt really bad that like I got the advanced lip sync really wrong, and I felt like I was spreading misinformation, especially to people who like don't know anything about like Live 2D or any like rigging capacity, and I just felt like really bad about that when a few people commented, that's not how that works. I was like, oh my god, I'm such a bad person. So I wanted to make sure that like I corrected that in this video. I'm gonna link a ton of YouTube videos in the description, kind of talking more in depth about some of the things I talked about in this video. So it'll be things like mouth rigging and how it works, advanced lip sync in depth, and kind of just other stuff that's related, if that makes sense. I would like to do a video on something like that eventually, but I feel like making a whole tutorial video that covers like all of Vtube Studio would be like really long. But if there's interest, I'll do it. If there's anything though that you guys wanted me to talk about or explain very specifically, I could also talk about like how to use plugins, some common plugins for Vtube Studio, how to set up emote scenes, item scenes. There's also some really cool features in Vtube Studio that people just like don't really commonly use or know about, and you can set them up to keybinds, so it's kind of neat. But yeah, thanks for watching my whole tutorial. I know it's like 30 minutes feels like a long time, so I hope that it wasn't like too endearing. I tried to make it really easy. If you have any questions, I'll try to reply to them when I have time. I'm currently preparing for like crazy con crunch. But yeah, thanks for watching.